Hi, my name is Emma. I'm a mindset and clarity coach, and this is a mindset mastery webinar where we go into all things mindset. Enjoy. I am and what I'm about. So on my own journey, I've gone through things like confidence issues, pursuing that perfectionism, coming from not feeling good enough, imposter syndrome, fear of judgment, fear of putting myself out there. And then as a result, I've gone through all these methods and all these things to get over this. And now I've made it my mission to support people to do the same. So you guys know already. Let me see if I can just put this, see if I can actually pin myself to the top and then, oh yeah. So now can you, yeah, you should be able to see me over the top there. So you're in the right place if you know you're capable of great things, but you hold yourself back due to self-doubt and fear of failure. You feel stuck in a cycle of old thinking patterns and behaviors that don't serve you. You never feel like you're doing enough, no matter how much success that you see and no matter how many things that you're doing. You want to gain confidence to start taking action. You fear judgment or rejection, and you spend a lot of time worrying about what people think. You find yourself procrastinating or busying yourself with small tasks that don't actually get you closer to your goals. So just wanting to seem busy, even though what you're doing is not actually essential. And you spend a lot of time thinking about what could go wrong or focusing on the negative. So maybe you guys can put a 1 in the chat box if you can relate to any of those, or if any of these are things you have experienced in the past. No.
Sorry,
Right.
sorry, I lost you for a second. Did you say to put a number?
Yeah, you can stick a 1 in the chat box or a thumbs up or raise your hand or whatever. What I've done is I've muted your video, so I can't actually see them. It just means I can see the whole screen. It just means I can see if you guys are fine. Yeah. We'll cover today gratitude. So Mum and Gianluca, you know that gratitude is the number one, the focus and the foundation of a positive mindset. And this is something that I preach in every workshop with every one-to-one client, every conversation that I had, it all comes back to gratitude, being grateful for what you have and being grateful for all the lessons that you're learning. That really helps cultivate that positive mindset and build that confidence. We'll talk about briefly the power of our thoughts and our beliefs in shaping our personality and then as a result, our reality. Breaking the cycle of old thought patterns and behaviors. So stopping the things that we are saying in our head, that narrative that's being repeated and saying, no, no more. This is what it used to be, and this is what I'm deciding consciously to change that to. We'll talk about aligning our identity with our goals, which I'm sure is something that I've talked with you guys about before, and then rewiring the brain. What can we actually do now that we're aware of these thought patterns? What can we actually do to change these, cement these, and create new patterns, new behaviors? And if you stay till the end, I have a special offer, which I will be sharing with you guys. So mindset fundamentals, gratitude, what we always come back to, being grateful for what we have and being grateful for the present moment. So this all comes back to the frequency that we vibrate at and much more. And we are grateful that raises our frequency. And through the law of attraction, which is like attracts like, if we focus on what we have to be grateful for, the universe will then give us more things to be grateful for. If we focus on the negatives, we will then attract more negative things into our situation. So I'm sure you can both think of people in our life and it's just, they're just complaining. And it's like one bad thing after the other seems to happen to this person. It's like they're a magnet for the negativity. If you focus your mind to always be concentrated on the negative, that is what you will get. If you focus your mind on all the reasons why you're not good enough, why you're not worthy, why nothing you do ever goes right, that is the reality that you will get. So what we need to do is through gratitude, prime our mindset to focus on the good, focus on what we have to be grateful for, focus on everything, all the abundance that we have in our life, and that is what we will get. We want to come to a place where you fall in love with life. You want to wake up every morning thinking, wow, I'm so lucky. I've got everything that I could possibly need. I am confident. I am worthy. I am enough, and romanticize everything. So even the small things, every morning, whenever I have my coffee, I think, wow, coffee is so amazing. It's so fantastic. I love life because this coffee is so great. And if you can bring yourself to a place where you are so grateful for these small things in life, then you will attract bigger and bigger things and more abundance. We want to be so grateful for everything you already have, and only then can you start attracting more things to come in. If you're not sufficiently grateful for what you already have, I really believe that it's very difficult to start attracting more, because it's almost like the universe testing you, like, are you grateful enough for this? If yes, then I can give you more of that stuff. But if you're not sufficiently grateful, I don't believe you can attract more. What we want to do is start your day with that positive mindset. So prime your brain to look for the good and the blessings in your life. So what are you guys grateful for today? Maybe you can share. We don't have so many people, so I guess you don't need to use the chat box.
Can
Go on,
tell
Mom,
you
you
what
can
I
go first.
wrote. Can tell you what I wrote in my journal this morning.
Please do.
I actually, it's funny because it's about the thing that we discussed when we first met.
Oh yeah.
So I had this goal of when I decided to launch this training program for what I do, I had this goal of reaching 10 people. I said if 10 people sign up, I'm good.
Yeah.
That's all I need. And today I had 10 people. Like this
Wow.
morning when I woke up, I had 10 people. So the first thing I wrote down was grateful for reach the 10 people goal on the training.
Nice. And how did it feel reaching that goal? Because I know so often we set these goals and then we get them and we're just like, okay, on to the next. Did you really sit in that and feel that and celebrate that?
Yes. This is
Yeah.
when it gets tricky though. Because I did celebrate. I was very happy. I wrote about it and I say, wow, I did it. And then the am I good enough to do this kicked in. I was happy. I am happy. I'm extremely happy, but there was this thought that was not allowing me to fully be happy, to fully be like, yeah, why don't you? I was telling myself, just shut up. You've done it.
Yeah.
That's what you want. But yeah.
And I think I just got off a call with my own coach and we were talking about imposter syndrome. And she said such a good point, which is when we're first starting out, the imposter syndrome doesn't really kick in. But once we get to that level, once we rise above the comfort zone that we've created for ourselves, that's when the imposter syndrome comes in, because it's like, I always strive to be this. Once I get to this, you realize like, I'm just a regular person, like, but I was striving for this and now I'm there. It's like, do I feel like I'm worthy for this? Like, do I feel like I actually deserve this success? And then once you get it, it's like, that's when your brain starts to kick in, because you're like, no, my comfort zone is down here. But now your comfort zone is rising up. That's when the self-doubt will kick in. So this is completely normal. And I really think that like the higher you go, the more common it is that self-doubt creeps in, because you're like, you're comfortable in, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but like we're very comfortable in the safety and security and the familiarity of the life that we already have. As soon as we rise above that and start creating a bigger identity for ourselves, achieving the things that we hadn't achieved before, that's when the self-doubt creeps in, because we're like, oh, this is not what I'm used to. So because we as human beings are primed for survival, we're primed for safety, sometimes whenever we go outside of that comfort zone, like it feels like something is wrong, because we're primed to think like the familiar is right, because evolutionary speaking, we know that this pathway works because I'm not dead. So because I'm trying to avoid danger, I want to follow what I've always followed. But as soon as you get out of that and start doing something different, that's when your brain's like, this feels a little bit uncomfortable because it's not known. You're doing something that you've never done before. You know, you've been striving to achieve this goal and now you've achieved it. So it's normal that creeps in. So it's almost like when the self-doubt comes, you know, like I must be doing something right because I'm expanding beyond what I've currently or I've always had. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, Varan, can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah,
Hey,
I can hear you. I'm good. I'm good. How have you been?
Excellent. Very, very good. All right, we're just going to keep on going.
Yeah, please.
So now what I'd love you guys to do is think of one situation in your life that is causing you worry, frustration, or anxiety. You're welcome to share. If not, you can just write it down and just keep it in your mind. We'll be going through a few different exercises. So what's one thing in your life at the minute that's causing you a bit of turmoil, a bit of emotional express, something that's kind of hanging on your mind?
You want us to write it?
Yeah, you can just write.
Okay, just a second.
Okay, and if you keep that situation in your mind, what we're then going to do is look at that through oh, mum, my pain won't go away. For anybody who doesn't know, my mum just had a back operation, so she's getting back to physical health. what we want to do is use gratitude to think about this situation. So, you know, you've heard the expression, every cloud has a silver lining. There's always something positive in every negative situation. So what we want to think is like this thing that's on our mind, that's hanging heavy on our shoulders. What is the worst case scenario of that thing? Because so often we think like, oh, what if it all goes tits up? But we don't actually give ourselves the space to think like, what would all tits up look like? Like, what would the worst case scenario look like? Then what we want to think is, what are the positives of the worst case scenario? So I work with a lot of people who are starting their own business, right? And like, I always use this example, like, what's the worst case scenario if you start your own business and you fail? Well, I guess if worst case scenario is, if this doesn't work out, I have to go back to my 9 to 5. What are the positives of that? Well, it's a stable income. It's working not on the weekends, because if I do my own business, maybe I have to work on the weekends. It's having more time for my family. It's that stability, that security that I'm looking for. There's always something to be grateful for. There's always something positive in the worst case scenario. So is it more time with your family? Is it, you know, stable money, or what would it be? So this one might be a bit personal. So I'll just get you to like have a think about that and reflect on that. Another way that we can use gratitude to bring us back to this place of neutrality is thinking like, what are the negatives of the thing that you're striving for? So maybe some of my clients, they're looking for starting their own business. They want to have, you know, 100 clients. What are the negatives of 100 clients? Maybe that could be, I have no time. I'm stressed. I feel overwhelmed. I'm run off my feet. I'm going to have anxiety as a result of that. And then what are the positives of today? So what are the positives of having no clients? And just thinking like, how can I reframe this so that we're not always striving for something? We want to, you know, remove our attachment to that outcome, focus on the presence, focus on the journey. What do you have to be grateful for today? What would be the things that you could be grateful for if everything did go to shit? This is kind of just bringing us back to less attachment on the outcome and more neutrality. So it's surrendering to just trusting that what will be, and we will be fine. We are enough no matter what, no matter how it turns out.
You're breaking up a wee bit, Emma. I don't know if anybody else is noticing that, but
oh, how's it for you guys? Is it all right?
Yeah, you were breaking up a bit. Okay, seems okay now.
Okay.
But I could hear you everything. I could hear everything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just mention again if it goes off, but hopefully that should be all right. All right. So let's keep going. So now what we want to think about is a fixed versus a growth mindset. So I'm sure you guys have all heard of these two different mindset types. So touch on each one, what they are. So a fixed mindset, I'll just move this. That's the belief that abilities, intelligence, and talents are static traits that cannot be changed. So this, you'll hear people say like, this is just who I am. It is what it is. I can't change. I'm just not good at anything like this. So people with a fixed mindset, they really attach the identity of who they are to the outcome of a situation. They tend to avoid challenges. They give up easily. They see any effort as fruitless unless it's going to be perfect. They ignore useful feedback, or they get triggered by feedback, and they feel threatened by the success of others. So people with this fixed mindset, you hear them say things like, I just don't like sports. It's not my fault. This is just how I am. I can't draw. I'm always late. Why does this always happen to me? And the main thing with this is they attach their identity to the outcome of a situation. So these are people who, you know, when something is going wrong, they really start questioning themselves. They start questioning their entire worth. They question who they are and what they're doing. And they don't just see that as one small blip that doesn't necessarily equate to them and their self-worth. So is this something that you guys can relate to or have experienced before? Maybe you can chat to see if you've come across or dealt with it all.
I can definitely relate to one of the things you wrote down there. For me, it's, I'll never be as good as them. It happens often. Yeah,
for sure. And what that is that saying, this is who I am. This is who I am today, is who I will always be. And I'm not capable of change. I'm not capable of improvement. So we can see that's very static. It's very fixed, because of course we are capable of change. And we'll talk a little bit more about that one later. So the opposite of that is the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed through dedication and hard work. So of course we're all capable of change. You know, you couldn't take riding a bike, for example. Before you learned to ride a bike, you couldn't ride a bike. But if you believed that's how I will always be, then you would never try anything new. You would never try to ride a bike, right? This mindset fosters an attachment to the importance of the learning experience. So it's not so much about the outcome, but it's about the lessons that you learn along the way. Cultivates a love for growth, resilience, and a willingness to embrace challenges and learn from criticism. So I want to just emphasize that it's not that you have one or the other. Like, I'm sure there are many things that you have a growth mindset for, and there might be other things that you have a fixed mindset for. So we can have both, and it's just finding that balance, leaning towards the growth. So that's saying things like, I can learn with practice. I am capable of change. I can study techniques to remember people's names. A lot of people say, like, I just can't remember names, but actually you can. It is possible to change. I can choose to become a morning person. So is there something that you guys have, you know, is there a challenge or an obstacle that you can think that you have a growth mindset when facing that one? So maybe you can just have a think, or so what we'll do, just go on. So basically, just to sum up those ones, a fixed mindset is when the failure of an outcome is attached to you as a person. So if you do something wrong, I'm a failure. I didn't get it because I'm bad. I'm useless. Everybody hates me. I never do anything right. Growth mindset, on the other hand, is maybe I've done something wrong, but it's a learning opportunity. Nobody's perfect. Next time I will know how to do this. So one of my clients, she's a web developer, and she messed up someone's website, which of course is not what you want to be doing. But because she did that, she then said, now I know how to fix that problem that I myself created. So it actually means I'm better as a web developer because I now have the skills from that thing that I would have liked to have avoided. I now have the skills to be better in the future. And I know I won't do that again because I've learned from that. So our brain is like a database of all the information that we've ever acquired in our life. Failure is just another entry point in that path and information as to how we can be better in the future. So it's learning to prime your brain that it's not all or nothing. It's not everything is terrible or everything is great. It's progress, of course, is not linear. And it's just accepting that we're going to fall and we're going to make mistakes. But every mistake that we make is a learning opportunity to make us better for the future. And if you think about the people in the world who are the most successful, it's not that they have succeeded in everything they have set their mind to, and they've never made a mistake. They've never been told no. They've never fucked anything up. They have, of course they have, but they have believed in their vision, and they know that it's not, progress is not like this. Sometimes it goes up and sometimes it goes down. But as long as the general direction is the direction that you want to be going, no failure, there's only feedback. So 90% of our thoughts are the same as the day before. So just take a minute to think about that. 90% of what we are thinking is the same as what we thought yesterday. It's the same as what we thought the day before. So if you're waking up every morning thinking, life shit, the weather here is crap, I don't have any money, the next day you're going to think the same, and the next day you're going to think the same, unless you become aware of these patterns and take control of that. So our brains, they love repetition, they love predictability, they love repeating the same things over and over again, because evolutionary speaking, that is what kept us safe. So this reinforces specific neural pathways, and our brain then becomes wired to think in this way. And what we need to remember is our thoughts influence our feelings and our emotions, and these influence our behaviors. Behaviors that are repeated over time, they create our habits, and our habits create who we are and our personality, which reflects how we show up in the world. And if we are thinking the same thoughts with the same emotions, the same behaviors, the same habits, we then have the same reality. So if we don't catch the thoughts that we have that don't take us where we want to go, we are not going to do anything differently, and nothing is going to change. So we need to make sure that we are catching our thoughts, changing them to be in alignment with the goals that we are setting and the identity we want to create. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So now what I just want you to have a think about is, what is the first thing that comes into your head when you wake up in the morning? And just being aware, like, is that positive? Is it negative? Is it empowering, or is it limiting? Are you waking up thinking, fuck this, fuck that, I've got to do this, I've got to do that? Or are you waking up thinking, wow, the sky's blue and I get to drink my coffee and I get to do all this stuff? We just want to be aware. We're not trying to change it at the minute, but just awareness. Yeah, go on.
Well,
100%. I think it comes back to like law of attraction. What you focus on expands, right? If you focus on what you can control, you will then be able to control more things. If you focus on what you can't control, which is other people, right? We can never control the people around us. We can only control how we react to them. That is what we will get. So it's focusing on what you can do and not trying to change other people because they are not you, right? You can only focus on yourself.
right.
So I wonder then if you bring it back to like what you're thinking about in the morning, are you thinking about what is in your control, or are you letting yourself think about what isn't in your control? Because that is going to contribute to your mindset, focusing on what you have the power to change and what you don't have the power to change. So if we kind of go back to this part, we want to say is like we have responsibility for our lives and nothing changes until you change. So if you focus on what you can't take responsibility for, that will leave you feeling powerless. And of course, that will impact your mindset. So thinking back to growth and fixed mindset is having a growth mindset is a choice. Neuroplasticity supports the idea that our mindset is not fixed. Our identity is not fixed. Just because you have been something up until this point does not mean that is the trajectory you need to be on for the rest of your life. Neuroplasticity supports that with effort and practice, different neural connections can strengthen, creating a different path towards a different life. What we want to do is we want to view challenges and failures as learning experiences rather than reflections of your worth. So everything we do is just collecting evidence for or against an identity that we are trying to create for ourselves. And I love this idea. And like I've probably spoken to you guys who I've done coaching or workshops with in the past is acting like a child. So when a child is learning to walk, if it falls over, a child is not going to turn around to itself and be like, well, you're useless. You're just not meant to be a walker. I'm never going to try that again because I tried it once and it didn't work out for me, right? They're going to try again. They're going to experiment. They're going to do something differently. And even if they fail, they're still going to enjoy it because they know like it's towards the bigger goal. And just because one small setback does not mean that I'm not good at this thing and I shouldn't be doing this thing. So I think it's like, we want to come to this place of self-compassion where we speak to ourselves as you would a child or as you would to someone that you love, right? It's saying like, okay, that didn't work. So what can you change for next time? What would you do differently next time? It's not saying just because one thing didn't work, then that is never going to work again. So if that's like speaking to your parents, for example, like what's one thing that didn't work, speaking to them before that you can then change the tactic and speak to them a different way next time. There's always something that we can learn. There's always something we can be grateful for. There's always something that we can change if we focus what is in our control. So what you believe about your life is what you will make true about your life. So this links back to what our subconscious believes. That is what we see in our environment. And I want to challenge you to think like, what are the self-limiting beliefs that you have about what you are capable of? What restrictions are you putting on yourself? What stories are you telling yourself as to why something is not possible for you? If you wake up in the morning and you say, this is all you're capable of, this is all you will ever be, then that is the reality that you create for yourself. If you wake up in the morning and say, everything is possible, anything is possible that I put my mind to, then that is the reality that you will create. So if you limit yourself with these stories that, oh, I'm not capable of this, like I'm a woman, I can't do this, I'm born here, this is not what I'm capable of, my parents are this way, I am that way, that is the reality you will create because that is the narrative that you are telling yourself. What we need to do is catch these beliefs, catch these thoughts, change them so that they are in alignment with where we want to go. So these are things like examples of fixed mindset, examples of the narratives we tell ourselves. That's just the way I am. I'm too old to be doing this. I am this. I am this kind of identity. I'm a procrastinator. And then the last one, which is so common, I will be happy when I'm rich, when I have 10 clients, when I am more successful. And then we all know that sometimes when we get to these goals, we realize like, oh, I'm not happy. So actually, it's not about the goal. It's about the identity that we create for ourselves. And it's about everything that we learn and develop on the way to the goal. What has changed in you from where you were starting off to now whenever you reach the goal? That is what we need to be focusing on. And that is focusing on a growth mindset. If we just put our, I was reading something the other day about astronauts, and so many astronauts after they've gone to the moon have depression because they're focusing their worth on this goal. Then when they get to the goal, they realize like, oh, I'm not as happy as I thought I would be whenever I get here. So instead of focusing on all the progress that they've made, And, you know, everything they've learned on the way, they just attach their whole self-worth to achieving a certain outcome. Then when the outcome happens, and when we get to that place, we realize like, oh, I'm still the same person. Nothing's actually changed. So it's really focusing on the growth, the lessons, and everything that you've learned along the way. We want to become aware of the origins of our beliefs. So if you have this belief, like, I'm not good enough, never amount to anything, this is just the way it is. We want to be aware of the origins, like, where did that come from? Are they from past experiences? For example, did you do something once that made you feel not good enough? Did someone tell you that? Was that a belief that's given to you by somebody else? Or is that a belief that you've come up with yourself? Then we want to challenge the validity of these beliefs. Like, is it true? Is it realistic? Is it fair to say that? Is this accurate in every situation with every person in every country, every place, every time? We want to really question, like, what is the narrative we're saying? If it's, for example, these things, that's just the way I am. I'm not good looking enough. I'll never get back to where I am, where I was. Is it true? Is it realistic? Is that how it is in every single situation, every time? And did you come up with this belief yourself based on a past experience, or was that belief given to you by somebody else? These are all the things that we need to be questioning whenever we're thinking about these limiting beliefs. So now if we think back to identity, every day we tell ourselves a story about who we are and the world that we live in. So these narratives we create for ourselves, these shape our identity and influence our behaviors and become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell yourself, I'm always late, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and you will always be late. If you tell yourself, I'm not good enough, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then you will not be good enough because your subconscious wants to stay consistent with this identity that you're creating for yourself. You need to stop these patterns, change them and reflect them. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but we need to first become aware of the narrative we are creating for ourselves for the identity that we are. So your personality creates your personal reality. Our thoughts and our emotions drive our behaviors, which, when repeated over time, become the habits that form our personality. And the subconscious brain is only able to scan the world and select the cues that match your subconscious programming. So if you believe something to be true, your brain will subconsciously change your behaviors, your interpretation of the world around you to align with this narrative that you're creating for yourself, to align with this identity that you're creating for yourself. Your brain will literally ignore any evidence to the contrary of the things that you believe. So this is why it's so important to become aware of what your beliefs are. And if they are not conducive to the person that you want to be, to the goals that you are trying to achieve, we need to reframe these and create new, more empowering beliefs. If every day you tell yourself you are not good enough, your brain will subconsciously change your behaviors to make sure that that belief is true, that you aren't good enough. You will self-sabotage yourself. You will procrastinate. You will stop yourself from succeeding because you want to be consistent with this belief that you're not good enough. Your brain will also subconsciously scan your environment to find evidence to support the fact that you're not good enough and ignore any evidence that you are, because we just want to be consistent with this identity we are creating for ourselves. So this is why it's so important to become aware of the stories that you're telling yourself, of the narrative that you're creating for yourself. So the good news about this is that your identity is not fixed. The story that you're telling yourself does not have to be the story you tell yourself for the rest of your life. If you want to manifest your desires, you have to intentionally design your future identity. Who do I want to become? What do I need to do to become that person? We want to visualize the person that we want to become, embody their thoughts, their habits, their behaviors to become that, to achieve the life that we want, and then start living in alignment. So we want to consciously choose every day. Do we want to be positive today? Do we want to be negative today? Do we want to focus on the good or focus on the bad? Do we want to grow or do we want to be fixed? What we're doing by this is choosing different thoughts, different behaviors, different actions, and connecting up neurons, which form a new neural pathway towards a set default set of patterns, set of behaviors. So it's like laying bricks. So if I'm choosing to be confident, every action I take that a confident person would take is like laying bricks on the path towards the ultimate goal of confidence. If I choose the other path, it's like laying bricks on that path towards the goal of self-doubt. So when you have enough bricks, when you do enough things and have enough beliefs that prove that you are a confident person, this becomes the default, and you just act like a confident person because you've created enough evidence for yourself. You've repeated the same patterns over and over that they then become a habit. You then become a confident person because you have all this evidence and you've created this pathway towards confidence. Does that make sense? Are you guys following me? Yeah. All right. So this is like what I mentioned before, is like evolutionary. We seek stability, we seek familiarity, we seek the things that we have always done. So identity change involves creating and strengthening these new pathways while allowing the old ones to weaken, which will be uncomfortable because it's not familiar. Just like whenever we were cavemen, you know, if I know that I go down to this watering hole and I'm not killed by a lion, my brain is going to favor going to that watering hole because I'm still alive, I haven't been killed. Our brains don't realize that actually now there is no danger, and that the only danger we have are like the limits that we put on ourselves, or judgment, fear, lack of confidence, whatever, you know, is going on in your mind right now. Our brains are wired to favor what we have always done. So even if what we've always done is not conducive to who we want to be, it's not beneficial for us, our brain is still going to favor that, and it's still going to feel right because that's what we're familiar with, it's what we're comfortable with. So despite our conscious desire for improvement and happiness, this tendency to stick with what we know is why self-sabotage can occur, because we want to stay in the comfort zone we have created for ourselves. So this is why the new, although potentially better, can feel uncertain because it's something that we are not familiar with and we don't know. So how can we rewire our brain? You know, we said 90% of the thoughts are the thoughts that we've always had. So how can we rewire this? How can we change this? The first one is knowledge and awareness. So just becoming aware of the stories that you're telling yourself, becoming aware of the limiting beliefs, becoming aware of your identity, what is going through your head. This is why I love journaling, because you can just write down everything that's coming up, write down how you reacted to things, write down your default pathways, your default responses, your default thoughts. Become aware of what is going on in your brain. Only by becoming aware of these thought patterns and emotional reactions can we start taking action to change them. So maybe you guys just want to take a second and just write down, like, what are the kind of main things that are going through your head? Are you focusing on what you're grateful for? Are you focusing on what you have? Are you focusing on what you lack, what you're scared of? Maybe just kind of write down a couple of the things that are commonly showing up in your mindset or in your behavior, in your patterns. Okay, and then once you kind of have a bit of idea about that, so similar to the fact that 90% of our thoughts are the same thoughts that we've had the day before and the day before, 95% of our personality is unconscious. We don't think about it, we just do it because that's what we've always done. What we need to do is use that conscious 5%, intentionally think, what am I doing to become aware of the habitual thoughts you have? Are those thoughts negative thoughts, like this is too difficult, I can't do that, I'm not as good as him? Remember, these become self-fulfilling prophecies. If that's what we're thinking, that is what we make true in our reality. We also need to become aware of our emotions. Like, are we focusing our emotions on negative feelings like guilt, fear, resentment, or grief? We also need to become aware of how we behave. So do we primarily resort to things like complaining, blaming, judging, acting with aggression? These are all things that are within our control to stop and change if we just become aware of how we're reacting, how we're thinking, and what we're doing. So what we want to do is take responsibility for our results in life, because we all have control over who we are and what we do and how we show up and how we are thinking. Joe Dispenza says this when he says, you want to become so conscious that you can't become unconscious. How many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? So for example, if you're trying to create a new habit, of course it will be difficult at the start, because you will revert back with the 90% of your personality to what you have always done. So you need to use that conscious 5%, that when you start reverting back to that old pathway, your conscious 5%, you can say, stop, actually, I realize this is not conducive to what I want. That self-doubt that is not conducive to what I want. That bad habit, that is not conducive to what I want. That focus on the negativity, that is not conducive to what I want. So first, I need to become so aware that I am doing everything with intention. Of course, it's not going to be possible 24/7 because we are not enlightened. We're not so aware of everything. You know, we are human beings, but it's just using that conscious 5% to say, like, what are my thoughts? What are my emotions? What are my behaviors? Are they conducive to who I want to be and what I'm trying to achieve? Or are they the opposite? In which case, we need to stop them, reframe them, and change them, which we're about to talk about. So what we want to do here, once we become aware of what we're doing, is breaking that cycle. So to create a new personal reality, you must break free from these habitual patterns, which involves consciously catching and changing your thoughts and emotions to create these new behaviors. This means like intentionally responding to different things rather than subconsciously reacting. So I'm sure like all of us have experienced, you know, whenever you're in a heightened emotional state, if you're angry, impatient, if you're scared, you do something and then you think, why did I do that? Because you're not responding, you're reacting subconsciously with the same reactions, the same behaviors that you have always done. So what we need to do is just be so conscious of how we're thinking, how we're speaking, how we're behaving, so that we choose our response in alignment with what we want and who we are. Then we need to do identity reprogramming, which is one of the main concepts that I teach in my one-to-one coaching program. Is what identity do you need to embody in order to achieve the life that you want or to be successful in this goal? And what I do with this is morning intention setting and evening evidence collection. So what I mean by that is in the morning, sit and think. I like to write it down. Some people just think about it in their heads. What do I need to do to embody the identity of the person I want to become? Is it a successful person, for example? Is it a confident person, for example? Is it a brave person, a compassionate person? What can I do today to be confident, to be successful, to be compassionate? What steps can I take? What actions can I take that would prove to myself that I am becoming this person? So maybe, for example, your goal is to be more confident, right? What can I do to be more confident? I will, maybe you're, doing your own business. I will talk to 4 potential clients. I will make eye contact with everybody I'm speaking to. I will stand up tall. I will be proud of myself. I will have positive self-talk. It's internal and external, right? And then evening evidence collection is at the end of the day, reflect back on your day. How conscious was I in my day? How consciously was I striving to be this, for example, confident person? When was I unconscious? When did I revert back to my old habits, my old behaviors, my old thought patterns? Of course, it will take time to change, but it's being conscious, being aware. What evidence can I collect for myself that I am changing? Because this is going to fuel this belief cycle. The more you believe, the more action you will take. So if we can sit down every evening and say, like, what did I do actually that was in alignment with my goal? What progress did I make towards my goal today? Is it being more confident? Is it being more successful? Is it being more healthy? What did I do today that proves that I am becoming this person? This shows our subconscious, like, oh, that identity I've created for myself, actually, maybe it's starting to break down and it's not so true anymore, because I'm starting to create this evidence that I am changing. This just goes back to your identity not being fixed, right? So what we want to do is get clear on, number one, who we are, where we are at the minute. How unconscious are we? How many of our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions are not conducive to what we want to be doing? Then we want to get clear on who we want to be. So this future version of myself, who is she? How does she speak to herself? How does she react to other people? How does she behave? What are her habits? Then we want to think, and I love like creating a list, like what habits are conducive to becoming that version of yourself? What habits are not conducive? Like what bad habits can you remove? What good habits can you implement? So maybe if you could take a minute and just think now, like, what is one habit that if you started doing this habit today, that would get you closer to where you want to be? Is it a thought? Is it a behavior? Is it how you react to people? Is it what time you wake up in the morning? Is it what you eat? How many people you speak to? It could be anything, right? It'll be very specific to you and your goals. What habit can you add? And then also, what's one habit you can take away? Maybe if you struggle with confidence, it's I'm not scrolling on Instagram until 12 o'clock every night. Maybe if you want to be more compassionate, it's I'm not reacting subconsciously when people trigger me. Like all these different things you can be thinking of, like what can you stop doing? What subconscious behavior do you have that you want to remove? And what can you add in that would get you closer to that version of yourself? And then while you guys are thinking of that question, I love this one. Like, if your future self turned up on your doorstep now, that is the version of you who has achieved everything you want. So whether that's a health goal, a fitness goal, a business goal, a mindset goal, a confidence goal, if the person who has achieved that turned up on your doorstep today, what actions would they tell you to take straight away to change your life for the better? Or what's one thing that they would say to you, stop that now, because you know that is not getting you where you want to be. If it's a negative thought that's recurring in your mind, stop that. If it's a behavior that you're doing every day that you know you shouldn't be doing, stop that. What would that person tell you, the future version of you who has everything you could ever want? What would they tell you to add? What would they tell you to take away? I love this, like leaning into your future self and asking them for advice. Like, what do you think I should do, considering you have done all the things that I'm looking for? So what we want to do now, this one is so important, is preparing for setbacks. Like when we have a goal that we are striving for, of course, progress is not going to be linear. Of course, every single step is not going to be a win. So what we want to do is predict and plan for these challenges and obstacles and think, what is your plan B? So for example, I had one client and he was a people pleaser. Anything anybody asked him to do, he'd be like, yep, no problem. And then that would lead to resentment because he actually doesn't have time to do everything everybody asked him for, or he would overwork himself and he would get so panicked and so stressed. So what he needs to do is predict and plan for these people coming to him saying, do this for me, do that for me. And, you know, or plan for how he is going to say no to these things. This removes the emotional reaction. So his subconscious response is to say, yep, no problem, leave it with me, I've got it. And then plan his response to that, which is, sorry, actually, no, I have too much on my plate, that's not possible. So whether that is a thought that coming up that you know is going to come up, that maybe imposter syndrome or that self-doubt or that negative self-talk, maybe it's a time thing, maybe it's other people. What are the obstacles and the challenges that you are going to come up against, and prepare? What is your plan B? What are you going to do when you come up against that? That means that you're still moving in the right direction, even if it's not in this along the exact same path that you originally planned to go down. That makes sense. So I've got a little bit more on that one. So just like I kind of mentioned earlier, oh yeah.
Absolutely. It makes sense.
This one explains a little bit more. That one can be a little bit like of a mouthful. So when we are, you know, choosing the thoughts that we have, choosing the emotions that we have, choosing the behaviors, choosing the habits, this is like creating a new neural pathway towards a default behavior. So making that our subconscious, our, you know, the habits that we default back to. We want to continue to go that direction without it being all or nothing. So for example, you know, if your intention is to run an ultra marathon, if I wake up one day and I'm really tired and I can't run the 30 kilometers that I had put down on my training plan for today, what can I do that continues in the direction of the ultra marathon without it being all or nothing? I either run that run or I don't run that run. What's a new decision that you can make when faced with a test or a trigger, which we will come across? We will inevitably have those tests and triggers. That isn't the full thing that you wanted to get to, but at least is getting you closer to where you're trying to go. So the neurobiology of how we make change is based on these neural pathways that we are trying to create, right? The brain works on repetition. So by just getting the reps in, even if it's a small step today, a bigger step tomorrow, you know, a slightly smaller step the next day, a bigger step the next day, it's all just based on repetition, getting you the right direction. So it doesn't have to be as frequent or as many as what you'd originally planned, but eventually over time, if you take enough small steps, that behavior becomes automatic. Those thought processes become automatic. Being confident becomes automatic. So even if you don't feel like it, it's just laying down one brick today and then continue building the path tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does. And I don't remember if it was Marcus Aurelius or Alexander himself. I'm sorry, not Alexander, Aristotle, who said, we are what we repeatedly do.
100%. Exactly that. And you can choose, right? You can choose, what do I want to repeatedly do today? Do I want to repeatedly think I'm not good enough, I'm useless, I'm a piece of shit, I'm never going to amount to anything? Or we want to repeatedly seek out evidence that proves actually I can change, I can do whatever I want, I can be confident, right? Because nothing is fixed, just like we were saying. I love that. We are what we repeatedly do, 100%.
Yep.
So this is the kind that I mentioned before, all or nothing. It's either stick to the training plan or don't bother. What his plan B would be instead of doing that 50-kilometer cycle, I can go for a walk, I can go for a swim, I can actually say, actually, my body just doesn't have the energy today, I can do a meditation. Or a different client, she always found herself falling into a habit of procrastinating because she was starting herself, she was fearing failure, she was feeling very overwhelmed, lack of confidence. Plan B, instead of doing that big thing that she had planned for today, is just do one thing today. Just start with one small thing. What can you do today that moves you in the same direction, even if it's not everything, right? Because there's always going to be something that will come up. But if we can, plan that there is one day that I'm going to be tired and I'm not going to want to cycle 50K. There is one day that self-doubt is going to creep in. But if I know that is coming and I've already planned for it, our brain can be like, oh, okay, this is that thing that I knew was happening. And I already thought about this and I planned how I was going to react to that. So actually now I'm not subconsciously reacting, I'm responding with the action that I have chosen whenever I preempt this coming up.
Right.
So what I want you guys to do now is just think of a possible setback that you might encounter when striving to achieve your goals, something that you're looking for. Comes back to being conscious, right? So reactions are subconscious and responses are conscious, right? They're intentional, they're planned. It's when you say like, okay, I know this person is going to piss me off. So next time they do that, how am I going to respond? Or am I going to just say, I'm just going to react subconsciously, automatically on autopilot, the way I've always reacted? It's being conscious, really conscious. Everything you do, everything you say, doing it intentionally and choosing, this is what I want.
Right.
So if we think back to a positive setback that you might encounter when striving to achieve your goal, what is a plan B that you can have prepared in advance? So one small thing that you can do that will move you in that same direction. So these, setbacks or obstacles, challenges can be internal, things like self-doubt, discomfort, that voice in your head saying like, you're not good enough for this. Or it can be external. So things like a challenging relationship or time management, like maybe you have kids and your kids are sick and you can't do that thing that you wanted to do today. Maybe it's financial restrictions. I'm starting my own business, but money is going to get tight. Like if we know these things are coming, we can have a plan B so that we can choose how we respond to these situations. So how can those responses be, or how can we respond to those? It can be like learning how to set boundaries, preempting how you're going to say no to people who are asking for demands on your time, choosing a less intense workout for that guy training for the ultra marathon. It's delegating when you don't have enough time to do everything and giving that to somebody else, or communicating, like how are you going to communicate with people to set those boundaries, to say what you want, to make sure that you're, coming into going along the same direction to achieve your goals. So you can just like have a think about what you will do in that situation. So this one I really love, and visualization. And I think like the difference between, normal visualization, which is what most people do, which is, for example, say you're running a marathon, everybody will visualize themselves crossing the finish line, right? But what we want to actually be doing is visualizing every step that we need to take to get us to that marathon, visualizing every challenge that we are going to come into when getting towards that marathon. So we want to visualize the alarm going off at 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning when you're tired, it's raining outside, you did a run yesterday, you have to do a run again today because it's on your training schedule. We want to visualize waking up, deciding to be positive, putting on your running shoes and going for that run, because that is what is going to get us to be running that marathon, not just visualizing yourself crossing the finish line in the sunshine, feeling amazing, right? It's visualizing all of the steps that we're going to have to take to get us to that, visualizing every challenge that we're going to overcome and picturing ourselves overcoming the challenge. Visualize yourself saying no to that voice that's telling you that you can't. Visualize yourself overcoming the challenges and putting in the work that you need to get you to that goal. So I'll just go through the next one. It's a little bit quick. I'm aware of the time. So we can sort of support this with positive affirmations. So if we catch these negative thoughts, like, I don't like this person, my boss hates me, like blah, 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 catch that and reframe it into something positive. So creating that new patterns, we want to consciously say, no, just because this is the same thought I thought yesterday does not mean I need to think it today. How can I reframe that into something different? And it's really important that at the bottom here, it says emotional intensity and supporting evidence. So if I, this is what I have a bit of a problem with affirmations, that you can't just look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich. But if we bring emotional intensity, what would being rich allow you to feel? Maybe I would feel secure. I would feel safe. I would feel proud of myself, right? So then you can have this affirmation if you allow yourself to feel those feelings, but also create this supporting evidence. For example, if your affirmation is, I am confident, what evidence do you have to support the fact that you are confident? I did a webinar, I did, contacted 4 clients, I blah, 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 blah. What did I do that proves I am a confident person? And have that evidence, because if you're just repeating something in your head over and over and over again that your subconscious doesn't believe, that's not going to do anything. It's not going to change anything. So you want to have that evidence, like, I am changing, I am, evolving, I am better than I was before, or different from I was before. That's the evidence that your subconscious needs to actually believe these affirmations, if affirmations is something that works for you.
Absolutely.
So this one, and anybody who has worked with me or come to my workshops before, you will know how much I hammer home the importance of aligned action. There's no point in changing your thoughts, changing your mindset, changing your beliefs if you don't do anything about it to support this and cement these changes. So that's consistent practice and reinforcement of these new thoughts, these new emotions and new behaviors over time, repeating them until they become habits. This is how we actively reshape our personality, taking this aligned action and doing something different from what we've always done. You can think things all you like, but if you don't actually put it into practice, nothing in your reality will change. And then at the bottom, I just want to emphasize, like, aligned action is not like taking that big step that scares you. Sometimes it's doing something small, like saying no to old thought patterns and behaviors that you would have said yes to. It's actively, consciously, intentionally choosing the path that you want to go down. It's choosing who you want to be. It's choosing how you want to show up, what you want to entertain in your mind, who you want to speak to, and what you want to do in that day. Are you guys still following me? Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So this is where we talk about, like, the importance of messy action. So a lot of people, they kind of fall into this habit of, if it's not perfect, then I'm not going to bother. And it has to be all or nothing. But we want to lean into messy action. So it's just thinking like everything is an experiment, thinking about that growth mindset. No matter what I do, even if it's successful or a failure, it's still doing something, right? And the more action we take, the more results we create. The more results we have, the more we believe that that thing is possible, because our subconscious needs evidence to prove a belief to be right or wrong. The more we believe, the more potential we can tap into, which fuels the more action that we take, right? So it all comes down to taking action, doing something to prove to yourself that just because I was always this way does not mean I have to always be this way, right? I have the power to change, and I have the power to change how I respond or react. So as I've been saying already, like, consistency is key. Repetition to create these new habits. Direction over speed. So we don't have to have everything today, but it's just putting one foot in front of the other, putting one brick down on that pathway towards a new life, towards a new thought patterns, towards a new identity, new behaviors, and focusing on progress over perfection. It's not possible for everything to be perfect. And once we let go of that, we will move a lot faster towards our goals. So to summarize what we've been talking about today, gratitude, the fundamental cornerstone to everything when it comes to mindset. Being grateful for what you have today, being grateful for all the changes that you've made, being grateful for all the abundance, all the blessings in your life is really the most important thing when it comes to anything to do with mindset. Next one is awareness. So just becoming aware of who we are, what we're doing, what that narrative is in our head, what beliefs are limiting us, what is holding us back. Then breaking the cycle, saying, no, I'm actually taking control, and I'm choosing what I entertain, what I do, how I act, how I show up in the world. Reprogramming your identity. So thinking consciously, this is who I want to be today, and then collecting that evidence in the evening. Did I become that person today, or have I got some feedback, some information that I can take forward so that I can be better tomorrow? Visualization, so not just the end goal, but every step and every challenge that will take you from where you are to achieving that goal. Affirmations that come with emotional intensity and also evidence, and then taking that aligned action. So actually doing something to cement these new thought patterns Otherwise, they will not be reinforced with belief. So thank you so much for joining.